stakeholders in the real estate sector converged today at the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce Roundtable to discuss navigating tax issues in Nigeria. In his presentation, the keynote speaker, Mr. Moshood Olajide, Associate Director, PwC Nigeria, gave an overview of the tax system in the real estate sector.
Two things. The first is we need to ask the state government to make public what exactly are these fees that are applicable for the purposes of perfecting title. That is very, very important. Having that information readily available in the public domain is very important. The second is we need to start to interrogate what are the things that are included in these perfection fees. So for example, there is a stamp duty item that is included in it, and it's not just clear why is stamp duty there. Why is the rate of stamp duty the rate that is included in the perfection fee? When the law is clear that stamp duty is at 1.5%, and once you pay that 1.5%, there shouldn't be an additional stamp duty layer when you're perfecting your title. So two issues. First, they need to make it public. What exactly are the rates applicable in all the states? The second is what exactly are the things included in that rate, and whether any of those things included in that rate should be in that rate. It's the same conversation around land use charge. Should neighborhood development be included in the land use charge? Should there be a development fee when you want to submit your plan? Those are the conversations around this item.
This was followed by a panel session where stakeholders made contributions and shared perspectives on taxation in the Nigerian real estate sector.
Talking about the issues of withholding tax and VAT, they are not the only taxes that are related to properties or real estate. There are other taxes and tax laws that are relevant. Let's quickly run through them. Companies income tax is one that is significant because if a company is in the business of property holding or property letting, whichever, and your income is specifically from property letting, maybe you are in the business, you buy properties, you sell, you get income from that. There is going to be payment of company's income tax on that income that you receive. So let's put that one aside. This is Landmark Towers, for example. Landmark Tower has a tenant. When the tenant to Landmark, when you are paying your rent to Landmark Towers, what the law says is that the person that is paying the rent to Landmark Towers, you are the payer. So government give you that responsibility as an agent of government. The person that is paying the rent should deduct the rate of withholding tax from paying over to Landmark Towers. But it doesn't happen like that, In practice, most tenants, they don't deduct and pay to the owner of the property because the owner of the property would say, I want my rent net of taxes. Just pay me what is due to me. If you want to go and pay withholding tax to government, go and meet government. I'm not government. I'm not interested. So what is in the law is different from what is in practice. The issue of government engaging a tenant to be the one that will withhold the rent in respect of rental income before you pay over to the owner of the property, it doesn't work in practice. So we have to look at that one. So that's one. Then the issue of VAT. Section 42 of VAT, which talks about goods and services, is very, very important. But then, what is good and what is services? That definition, we still have some work to do. The tax authorities, they still have work to do in what constitutes good and services.
How many investments will you start and in 3 years, you make good money or you make your return back on your investments?
So, more
how
feedback.
many?
Go ahead, please.
In 5 years, you are just barely breaking even. So where's the incentives? There are no, as far as I can see, there are no incentives. Now, because we have fall in our revenue, all we want to do is grab as much as we can. Even if the companies are dying, we don't care. I was with a client, and the Lagos state officials came in and sealed up an hotel because of land use charge. We have foreigners in the hotel. They didn't care. I think we're in recession. We need investment, foreign direct investment into this country. How do we encourage them? In the last 2 years or so, or thereabout, no pioneer status has been issued. Last week, the House of Rep invited almost 200 companies to Abuja on this issue. I think the tax professionals here need to do a lot about this. We need to invite investment into this country. Dubai is what it is today because it is virtually tax-free. Yes, if I'm not paying company income tax, there are other taxes to be paid. So if a company is doing well from not paying income tax, they pay consumption for for instance, hotels. They pay consumption tax. They'll pay their payee. They'll pay so many other taxes. So what are we doing to encourage investment in this country? The government cannot give us homes, definitely. And the few ones that are in real estate, they want to make their money back. And when you consider all the taxes that they have to pay, a client of mine called me and said, we want to renew our C of O. And you can imagine a manufacturing company asked to come and pay about 1.4 billion just for a renewal of a C of O. We have issues. We have serious issues that we need to deal with. It's not just about collection of taxes. What are these people going through before you can tax them?
We need to pay tax. We would avoid it if we can. But we need, as a matter of responsibility and as a matter of our collective development, to pay tax. I think the challenge that we have had with issues of tax on real estate is a lot of the fact that it's very opaque, it's very subjective, and the figures are not usually in tune with reality. Let's start from something like even the withholding tax. When you're taking a lease, you take a lease of a property, you pay maybe 1 million naira. The government expects you to pay another 100,000 or 150,000 in terms of withholding tax. Now, there's no way I'm not going to try to avoid it. But if the tax was as little as 10,000 naira, I wouldn't have a problem paying it.
I think ultimately the government has got to decide what it wants for the country. Because I know, Mrs. Somorin, given your background as a tax administrator, you will think Nigerians don't want to pay tax. But really, we've got to say to ourselves that tax is an instrument of fiscal policy. You use tax to modulate the economy. What do you want people to do? If you don't want people to do certain things, you tax them. If you want them to do certain things, you either reduce the tax or you remove it altogether. Give an example of stamp duty. Under the law, stamp duty on mortgages is 0.3%. JTB woke up one day and increased it to 1.5%. They reviewed it. They don't have the power under the law to review it, but they did anyway. Then FRS came up in 2015 and also tried to review it. But they don't have the power. It's a law. They've got to go to National Assembly. So they've been going around now trying to assess stamp duty on people. And the friendly advice here is before you rush to pay that charge by the FRS, speak to your lawyers. Because the rates at which they are charging you is in some cases 400% higher than what's in the law. When the law says your stamp duty is 50 kobo, and FRS is charging you 5,000 naira, and then you multiply that by the value of the building, which is not in the stamp duties law, all of a sudden, you find that you are paying duty of 1.5 billion when the law doesn't require you to do so. Because they are looking at tax as an instrument of revenue collection. That is FRS's duty, yes. But tax in itself is a tool of fiscal policy. So you got to say to yourself, if I want this economy to develop, and I want investors to bring money in and put it into asset classes that didn't previously exist, how do I incentivize them into doing so? It's not by criminalizing them and saying that they are tax evaders or sending them property assessments. So if I've operated in business and I haven't made profit, but I have a passive asset like a head office, if I'm a bank and I have a head office that's worth billions, and you say because I haven't made profit in that year, you're going to tax me on the basis of the property value. that I've had on my balance sheet for the last 20 years. How am I going to pay that tax? Go borrow money to pay it? You're not encouraging me. So we've got to engage with the government. We've got to ask them, what is your overarching direction? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to tax us to death, and then we'll all die and you have no revenue next year? Or are you trying to encourage us?
Some of the key leaders in the real estate space shared their takeaways from the forum and the way forward for taxation in the sector.
I believe that in terms of the objective that we set, which is to draw people's attention to the significance of tax in real estate transactions, and that's been achieved. We've also identified a lot of reforms which have taken place, particularly in Lagos State and some at the federal level. But more importantly, we've also identified a number of things that we need to do going into the future. So we are setting an agenda for reform, which we will be taking up with the appropriate levels and departments and ministries in the government section. So I think largely today we've started that process. We'll create the forum, we'll push the agenda so that we can have the right environment for businesses to thrive all over the country.
One of the main things that has come out of here is the need to review or take a critical look at the taxes that are levied on real estate. And we're hoping that the communique and the things that we've discussed here will get back to those in government, and hopefully they'll take them seriously. And then let's see if we can really review some of these taxes. The ones that need to go higher, we'll make them higher, but quite a lot of them need to come down. And then the opaqueness that accompanies the calculation of these taxes, there needs to be a lot more transparency. So I can sit down in my home and actually see what it is that I am liable for, how much I should be able to pay. It's not dependent on the whims and caprices of somebody in the ministry interpreting the law in his own, in whatever way he deems fit, trying to meet a target or trying to meet an objective that the government has set for him at the beginning of the year.
Well, Lagos State is doing something at the moment about ease of doing business. Taxation is a huge part of that. So this type of intervention will contribute meaningfully towards that intervention. And what I advocated is that we should move beyond debating to actually producing a blueprint of the model that the private sector desire, of the changes that we desire to see. Because the policymakers out there are only interested in where is the blueprint. So if you are talking about a problem, we must recognize that there are bound to be different approaches to solving that same problem. So let us come with our own preferred model and then push it to a logical conclusion.
It is expected that the recommendations from this roundtable will galvanize efforts towards the amicable resolution of issues relating to tax as it affects the Nigerian real estate sector. This will go a long way in improving the landscape of the tax policy in the country.